is composed of a Tau cross, composed with what I call the primordial egg laid upon the top of the Tau cross, and we will get into that into much deeper future films and presentations. So we won't get into that here, but it is literally the gateway. It is the mouth, what's known as the Egyptian Ru, it literally means mouth or gateway. So it is essentially a form of the uterus, which is a feminine version of the cosmic egg, as we have just shown here. I forget the order, but either way, it will be very close to this segment of the presentation. And again, it's the cosmic egg, the primordial egg laid upon the top of the Tau cross, which corresponds. So this is the so below the belt, or in other words, the uterine correspondence with what also occurs of the ascension to the heavens, in other words, in the skull of the human anatomy. And so this is why, as I've shown in my previous Symbols of Power films, I think it was part 4, I explained the esoteric anatomy of the perineal Ankh in the female perineal muscles. But here again, I'm showing the sacred egg, or the Ru, the gateway, the sacred egg shape of the foramen magnum, which is the central hole that the spinal cord and the spinal column passes through in all vertebrates. So all vertebrates with a central nervous system and a vertebrae, a spinal column, all have this foramen magnum, which is, at least for humans, at least for the top vertebrae in the skull, happens to be the sacred egg shape of the Ru, of the Ankh. And as I've shown here, the cranial floor, what is known as the superior cranial fossa, which is an above view of the cranial floor, we're seeing the exact symbolism here, which I will show you my other graphics of how I've discovered that it's exactly the symbolism of the Ankh, with the Jed pillar as well, the Jed pillar upheld with the Ankh on top, complete with a perfect hexagram of the Jed pillar upholding the Ankh and the sacred Ru, the foramen magnum, with the star tetrahedron, or the sexagram, the sexagesimal, the star tetrahedron, hexagram, the vertebral gateway. And this is the very reason why the cerebral circle of Willis, which is the network of arteries of the cerebrum, the arteries of the brain attaching to the brain, this is why the circle of Willis is the Ankh shape, is because it has to contour around the foramen magnum of the vertebrae of the spinal column. So that is why the arterial system contours to the skeletal system. And again, I showed in Symbols of Power Part 4, I demonstrated what I call the perineal Ankh, the portal of life, or the gateway of life. And again, the Ru, which is the gateway symbolism on the Ankh, literally means a gateway or a mouth. And here we're referring to the vagine. Literally, the perineal muscles, what I've discovered is the perineal Ankh. In the perineal muscles perfectly corresponds. And I showed this in numerous symbolism. I showed the actual exiting of where the child is born out of the gateway is literally, head coming through is literally the same shape as the sacred egg, as the gateway, the mouth. In the ancient times, they used these three symbols of the Jed, Was, and the Ankh. The Ankh, Jed, Was were the symbols of life, death, rebirth, and the gateway. And the reason why is because it was referred to as the three thoracic aspects of the Apis bull god, or the reverence of the bull. Again, Was, Jed, Ankh, with the serpent goddess Wadjet as well. And this was referred to as the generative magic principles. And in the female hermetic magic was called Heka, which is the root for Greek Hecate, the female goddess of magic. And again, the bull's thoracic vertebrae is the Ankh shape, with the thoracic vertebrae being the Jed pillar as well as the dried bull penis literally becomes the Was scepter, or the Was staff, the sacred reproductive organs of the sacred Apis bull, the generative principles of life and death and rebirth. just as, again, the origins, and again in academia, the origins of the Apis bull, or the Ankh symbolism, was referred to as the bull's sacrum, the bull's vertebrae, the thoracic vertebrae of the bull's spinal column. And in the bull's vertebrae literally is, I've discovered here, is literally the sacred symbolism of the Apis bull, the solar calf, or the solar cow, the solar bull, representative of Osiris, who is also represented by the Jed pillar. So in other words, you have the spine and the cross of what I call the cross of the cerebellum, the cerebellar cross, which we will cover here in several segments further on. But the order that I'm doing this is all screwed up, but it will all flow in a synchronistic way. So the spine crossed by the cerebellar cross with the egg, the cosmic egg of the thalamus, or the midbrain, laid upon the top of the cross, or the crucifixion of the human body. So this will all become very clear later on in the presentation. But so again, the Venus symbol is a rendition of the ancient Egyptian cross. And so this is the culmination of all of these. The amalgamation of this is where we get the musician Prince's symbol from, which is a combination of both masculine and feminine. So which is because Prince is, of course, he is a hermaphrodite, essentially. Not literally, but he is the archetype of Mercury. He is the hermaphrodite, Hermes and Aphrodite. In other words, Mercury and Venus. So he is the combination of both masculine and feminine. And this is very prominent in his character and the way he portrays himself in his artistic, expression and all. And so as we covered back in Symbols of Power Part 3, we covered the symbolism of the horseshoe, or the gateway, the opening, the crescent, the arch, or the arch of heaven, the vault of heaven, and all of that good stuff, representing again the female uterus, the feminine counterpart to the masculine pillar, the axis mundi, the world pillar, the support structure, which again, we covered the various symbols of the power symbol, the sexual symbols, and all of that. So again, that's exactly what the Ankh symbol is. It is a divine union, a divine marriage, a sacred marriage between the masculine and feminine. The pillar which penetrates the feminine curve, the feminine horseshoe, the feminine arch, the omega, Greek omega symbol, if you will, which again we covered was the symbol of the water pot, which literally in Egypt meant the female uterus. Female uterus was the symbol of the water pot. So again, we've already covered all of that and how it corresponds directly to the human anatomy, fractally, as it represents, again, as above in the brain and in the skull, and so direct corresponding so below the belt counterparts of the uterus once again, and also the larger fractal component of the entire human body itself, representing the Ankh symbol, which represents eternal life and death and rebirth, resurrection, because again, the masculine and feminine reproduction is eternal life. It is creating eternal life through reproductive means. So again, we're referring to the resurrection and the Christ symbolism and the resurrection and all of that, the cross, the golden egg laid upon the top of the Tau cross, upon the top of the world tree, the axis mundi, once again, the human skull, the egg, the sacred golden egg of enlightenment and knowledge laid upon the top of the cross of the human body, again, as above so below the belt, the arch of heaven, as we covered in Symbols of Power Part 3 once again. So it is representing the quest, the divine quest for the golden egg, the holy grail, essentially, from seeking the lower portions of the body and raising them, lifting them up to having an enlightenment, a consciousness experience, a divine revelatory, a revelation, to having a divine epiphany and the epiphysis, which is the pineal gland, which is why we have the symbolism of a light bulb going off in our head, because it is the symbol of enlightenment, of the light of consciousness, the pinnacle, the apex of experience. When the light bulb flashes, the light bulb goes off, which is why the Tau cross is topped by the light bulb symbol, which is what the light bulb symbol literally is. It is the root, it is the gateway. It is the Ankh, essentially, which is why Tesla's oscillator symbols were literally also depicted after the Egyptian Ankh, representing electricity and the electric nature of light and consciousness. And we will get so much deeper into this in the future presentation of the Phoenix Rising and the Ashes of Pyrification presentation and film once I get to that one. It's already available in full ebook format. You can check that out at patreon.com/liftingtheveil. I have recently changed the restricted access to all of these, at least $1 a month, if you want full access to these presentations before they become before I film them and put them onto my channel and all of that. Please help support me in producing all of this work by checking that out. And so again, while the Jed pillar represents the cosmic axis, or the spine, the vertebrae of Osiris, literally the axis, the world axis, the cosmic axis, so too does the Ankh also officially come from the sacrum or the vertebrae of the bull spine, the bull sacrum, which again represents the bull god Osiris in numerous ways. In numerous ways are the Egyptian pantheon associated to solar bull and lunar cow gods and goddesses. But again, so Osiris representing literally the constellation of Orion, as we know it today, but the constellation of Osiris, again, which is where we literally get the tarot symbolism of the Fool, with followed by his little dog Toto, embarking upon the journey, which is representative of the original form of the Fool, of the hero's journey of the bull god Osiris in the sky, again as the hunter, depicted holding up the shield, which is the very origin of where we get our modern practices of our ancient and modern practices of bullfighting, comes from Orion, or Osiris, the hunter, the bull god, associated with literally holding up the shield against the bull, the constellation of Taurus. So again, hence the attributions of the sacred bull god Osiris, again as the slain harvest lord. So again, in Symbols of Power Part 2 and Part 3, again we covered the significance of the sacrum, or the sacrum, and the sacrifice, the sacral regions, the sacrificial sacrum, and all of that essence. So go back and see those full films for the complete essence of that. So again, this is where the bull sacrum originates, the symbol of the Ankh, but there's so much more to the depth and the knowledge of that symbol. And so the almond-shaped, or in other words, the mandorla shape of the roux, of the mouth and the gateway of the ancient Egyptian Ankh symbol, is, as we've covered throughout the Symbols of Power Part 3 film series, the significance of the golden ratio egg geometry. So it is literally encoding the mathematics of the phi ratio, and in other words, the golden mean, the golden ratio, the golden section, encoded within the very symbol of the Ankh itself, which is the golden spiral, the golden mathematics, the ratio of the creation of the fractality of life. So it is literally the essential symbol of the creation of life, in the representation of it, the conjoining, or in other words, the union between the two phi spirals, between two phi golden ratio spirals, is constructed the golden mean ratio egg. And again, I'm not a mathematician whatsoever, so I don't actually fully I have to disclose, I don't actually fully understand how to mathematically construct the golden mean egg or any of these things, but I am just aware of these patterns and of the symbolism that it alludes to, that it represents, although I can't go the full distance. I can't go fully because I'm not well versed in mathematics or actually drawing mathematical geometry myself. That is my one missing link. That is my missing key that inhibits me from completing this journey from the gnosis of the symbolism to the actual coming to fruition of bringing these forms into existence through mathematics and geometry. But that's what it represents. So it represents the conjoining or the conjunction of the two halves of the 5 spirals, which create this almond-shaped mandorla, again, which is the golden mean egg, the golden egg ratio, as we covered fully in Symbols of Power Part 3. So go back to see that full film for the understanding the complete significance of the golden mean and the golden egg itself. But so this is the union of the two. So this is why the roux, the gateway, the mouthway, and the gateway between the two lies between the two. It lies between essentially the two pillars, the two halves, the two hemispheres, the two polarities, which join and unite at the center of which creates a Vesica Pisces, a mandorla, almond-shaped center point, a gateway between the two hemispheres. And this is represented by the sacred occult Masonic numerology of the 101, is the gateway of initiation. And this is the secret meaning of the real, I don't know if it's secret or not, but this is the true, basically unknown meaning of why our initiation classes, our initiation level courses and phases are signified as 101, as the initiatory course. Course 101, you are a beginner, you are an initiate, you are entering into the doors, into the temple of wisdom, into the house of learning, into the house of wisdom. You are entering the sacred course of the initiation into the 101 through the gateway, and as a beginner, as a neophyte, as an initiate into the learning. We'll be covering this motif so much more fully in one of my next upcoming films after this. I don't want to cover that fully in this one. It'll take us too far off track and off topic, but I do want to cover this because it's significant to what we're showing here. And so it's the sacred 101, the sacred gateway between the two pillars, the two serpents of the Kundalini energy, the Kundalini serpents of the polarities of the spine, of the body. The central nervous tracts, the ascending and descending nervous tracts, represented as the sacred 101, again, which is literally the vaginal passageway of the goddess vulva, the almond-shaped mandorla, the Vesica Pisces-shaped gateway, the mouth, the south mouth, between the gateway of her two pillars, which is her two legs. And I will show this so much more fully in many more future segments and future presentations. I don't want to go fully into this right now, but I did want to disclose this because once I let this cat out of the bag, I have to fully, completely follow through on it. Okay, so update. I started making this video numerous years ago, and since I've been making this video, I have recently completed the presentation that I was just mentioning just now, and so that full film is actually completed and it's available for viewing on what was my main YouTube channel, but I haven't re-uploaded it to my second YouTube channel since YouTube terminated my main channel. But it's still available on my backup channels on Odyssey, and also on, I think it might be on Rumble now as well. If not, it's only on my main backup channel on Odyssey. But I've got it available in my archive, in my archive links, so I can provide that full film to my patrons and upon request for my subscribers. If you're currently a patron, a supporter of my channel, I will be glad to provide that video. If not, you'll have to wait until I get around to uploading it to my new channel. So, you'll just have to wait if not. But for supporters and patrons, I'll be happy to shoot you a link for that. And I find it very intriguing and also pretty funny and interesting that how this particular temple, this goddess temple entrance, portal of initiation through the yoni, is literally, it's depicting the sacred entrance being guarded by the sharp teeth of the mythical vagina dentata, which was a myth of men had this phobia, this fear of intercourse with a woman for fear that she has teeth in the south mouth, literally the south mouth, and for fear of having their member bitten off by the ferocious goddess. So it's highly significant, highly symbolic, that I was able to find this image somewhere along the way throughout my research, and I don't know where I found it from, but I was like, oh my God, yes. Literally, I can't make this stuff up. So yeah, it's literally, it's got the teeth. It's the guardian of the entranceway, because for those who, the initiate who seeks, who is not worthy of entrance into the temple, this is what the gateway is for. It is the gauntlet. It is the passage of the trial by, by passage. The rite of passage is what it literally is, which is why, I mean, we find this all throughout Hollywood storytelling, as well as, old esoterica mythology, the world over. So this is why we find it in, the mythical fables such as, Lord of the Rings, the gateway of initiation through the twin pillars of, I forget who the name of the kings of the twin pillars, that they enter the gauntlet through the initiation down through the rapids, into the land of Gondor. And we also find it's highly significant in the Never-Ending Story, as the world famous Atreyu, the hero's journey passing through the gateway of initiation, where those who are not worthy with false intentions get destroyed upon entry. And so this is why you have to have the virtuous qualities. You have to be strong and confident and honest and have integrity in order to pass your way successfully through the gateway of initiation. It is the trial by fire. It is the purification ritual. And of course, since I've now just brought this up again, back in Symbols of Power Part 2, and then rehashed again in Part 3, we covered fully the significance of the symbolism of the two cherubim, which guard the Ark of the Covenant. Again, the Ark, the spark, the covenant between the two hemispheres, between the two polarities, the gateway, the Sphinx, the two sphinxes of the wings of the cherubim, as we covered back in Symbols of Power Part 2 once again. So, again, this is represented by the ancient Egyptian winged disc, the winged sun, which, again, holds directly between the two Kundalini serpents, which is the very symbol, the ultimate epitome of the symbolism of consciousness and enlightenment. The sacred 101 of the gateway, the entranceway of the sun of consciousness, the enlightenment between the twin pillars, between the twin serpents, between the dual dragons, between, what have you, on and on and on and on and on. These infinite motifs of the same recurring underlying truth of all stories and of all mythology and of all religions and all theology, the light of consciousness within man, the gateway of initiation into infinite eternal consciousness of death and rebirth, which is why the entire Masonic tradition is all about entering through 3 or 4 gateways, 3 or 4 doorways, which need to be unlocked. And this is symbolized in the Masonic 3 ladders. With the doorways. Again, you are ascending the ladder to heaven, the stairway to heaven, Jacob's ladder. You are ascending the ladder to consciousness up the spine, which is why the 3 gateways of initiation are literally the anatomical centers, the gateways of initiation inside the body. Again, which is first the base gateway, which is the yoni, the portal of initiation, the sacral region, the sexual region, which needs to be unlocked, and the energy, the Kundalini energy, travels through that gateway, through that doorway, into the second initiation doorway, which is the heart center. Again, the sacred sphere of the heart, or again, the golden egg of the heart once again. And once that initiation is unlocked, then again, you pass through the third gateway, which is the throat, the throat chakra, the vocal cords, literally, again, the yoni, the second yoni, up in the throat. And then the final and last gateway of initiation is the fornix, the gateway of initiation in the very center of the brain, at the thalamus, at the uppermost pinnacle, at the head of the caduceus coil of the enlightenment of consciousness. This is why we also find it in Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One, which the whole story, the whole journey is about the hero entering into this journey of searching for the golden Easter egg. And the whole movie is about an Easter egg hunt. Not just for Easter eggs as clues, but literally for the golden Easter egg, where this is why they show in the movie posters, they show you, join the quest, which is why the heroes enter into the quest through the gateway of initiation. You are joining the quest. You are seeking for the golden egg. And so again, it's also in mythology. As student of Carl Jung, Eric Newman, psychologist, philosopher, has relayed one such myth in which a quote-unquote a fish inhabits the vagina of the vagine of the terrible mother. And again, we've covered the chaos mother, the terrible mother goddess in Symbols of Power Part 2 and Part 3 as well. Primarily Part 3. So go back and see that full film, because the terrible dragon goddess mother is going to be a significant and recurring theme all throughout mythology and storytelling the world over. And the hero archetype is the man who overcomes and slays, again, or who conquers, or who tames, and as we covered in Symbols of Power Part 3, the hero who slays her. He lays her. It's a symbolic, allegorical mythology for sexual conquest, but not just conquest, an overcoming, a union. It represents a conquering of one's lower nature. And so in doing so, he breaks the teeth out of her vagine, and in so makes her into a woman. But the folklore and the story tales were essentially designed to caution against the dangers of unknown women, and thus to discourage rape. And also included in the mythology of Hinduism, of Shiva, where Shiva and Parvati's own son tries to kill Shiva and get him to surrender his wife, which is actually his own mother. So what happens? So then another Asura takes the form of Parvati, which is Shiva's consort, in order to seduce and kill Shiva. So he takes the form of Shiva's wife in order to seduce Shiva and then kill him with a toothed vagine in order to avenge Shiva's son, who was slain by Shiva trying to... So it's really weird, but so you get the point of the message. And between the portal of initiation lies the golden sun, the golden egg, the sun, the golden light of consciousness, the light of illumination, the light of enlightenment, which is the goal, the seeking process, the unity of the one light, the one mind of infinite consciousness, of source consciousness, of God, the light of God, the consciousness of God, which is why Jesus is considered the gateway when he says, "Nobody shall come inside my Father except through me," because Jesus is the gateway. He is the sun. He is literally the sun, the light of the world, the light of consciousness, the light within us, the inner sun of the thalamus within the brain, golden egg of consciousness, the light of illumination, the golden sun within man, the sun of man, the sun in man. Because I can't just leave it, unexplored. So that is why it's representing this gateway between the two, the portal of initiation, if you will. It is the portal of consciousness, representing that light, the light bulb of consciousness, the central channel, the Sushumna, which travels up the cosmic axis into the Enlightenment. And this is why the golden egg geometry of the sacred mandorla, Ankh, or the Ru, the gateway, represents again the vaginal passageway, also which is the so below the belt correspondence to its direct counterpart, which corresponds above the belt in the again, which is the second mouth or gateway. Literally, once we enter the mouth into the throat of the vocal cords, is also the mandorla almond shaped Ru, the gateway, the mouthway between the two, between the gateway between the two vocal cords, which come together and unite as one to create and give birth to sound and give birth to speech, to vocal. And so again, this is why that gateway, the mouthway, literally is again, the throat is again the exact as above correspondence to so below the belt in the vaginal passageway, as we've covered fully throughout the Symbols of Power Part 2 and Part 3 films. Again, it represents the Trinity, the triune, tripartite aspect of creation in its final and culminating pinnacle in the apex of the third ventricle of the brain, where the pineal gland is located between the two hemispheres, between the diencephalon, between the two heads of the thalamus, of the diencephalon, between the two lobes, the two hemispheres of the brain, between the two pillars, if you will, of the tree of wisdom, where he is at the feet of the old crone, of the Allfather Odin or Saturn, who gives him the inward sight to become the three-eyed raven, whom is crucified upon the sacred tree of knowledge, or the tree of wisdom, just as Christ, the same story of Christ, also crucified upon the sacred tree, penetrated by the spear in his side, just as Odin and just as Osiris, all the slain father gods who were crucified or hanged or entombed upon the sacred tree after being slain or penetrated with the spear. And so to understand this aspect deeper, again, you'll have to understand everything we covered back in Symbols of Power Part 3, where, again, Osiris was symbolized as the trunk of the tamarisk tree. So he was the trunk, the tree trunk. He was the world pillar, the axis mundi. And this was called the Jed, and he became known as the Jed pillar and symbolized as the Jed pillar. And the Jed pillar symbolizes, again, the axis mundi, which was the world axis around which the world turned. So he was the world pillar of stability. Again, this is literally why it's symbolically known as the raising of the Jed, raising of the Jed pillar, which is literally the raising of the dead, the resurrection of the slain god, which was literally the 24.5 degree sacred axis of the earth, as 24.5 degrees was absolutely sacred to all the ancient artwork. And when the city of Memphis of Egypt was founded, which Memphis literally means the white wall, which again, we're covering the etymology here, Proto-Indo-European root of well, which is literally the root of wall. So it is the same root meaning, the same root as to turn, to spin, or to rotate around the axis, the spindle. Just as Bran Stark at the feet of Osiris is divining the white wall. So in ancient Memphite theology, the god Ptah eventually replaced Osiris as the Jed pillar. And as we covered in Symbols of Power Part 2 and Part 3, again, what I showed you earlier is the symbol of Ptah symbolized literally he was the world pillar, which was the pillar of the brain stem, the base of the brain, which was also symbolized by Osiris, was literally the brain stem and the base of the brain. And we will cover this so much more in depth in the future books and presentations. But so again, Osiris depicting actually being crucified upon the tree of life, the tamarisk tree, the tree of life, is actually the arbor vitae, this is something that a profound discovery that I've made, is that the tree of life, Osiris or the slain harvest god being sacrificed on the tree of life, on the arbor vitae, as depicted here of Thoth describing the name of Seti the First upon the tree of life, is literally depicting the arbor vitae inside the cerebellum of the brain, which is literally where Jesus and Osiris, or the slain sacrificed god, were crucified on the tree. And so the ancient tree of life has been associated as the acacia tree in ancient Egypt, which is known for its production of dimethyltryptamine, the psychedelic component, which, as we've covered in Symbols of Power Part 1 and Part 2 Part 2 and Part 3, is again a major component of the brain produced by the pineal gland, but it's the majority of which is produced in the lungs, actually by the alveoli in the lungs, which also greatly resemble, again, the arbor vitae here in the cerebellum, as we're observing here. And so the ancient Egyptians, and as well as the ancient Hindu Vedas, were extremely masterful in their dissection and preparation and study of the human anatomy and physiology. A myriad of correspondence between deified archetypes, theological motifs, and symbols that we find corresponding with the human anatomy, and the more clear and obvious this conclusion becomes. For example, yet again, the depictions of the god Thoth, the god of knowledge, scripture, math, and all things intellectual, and the god of wisdom, inscribing the name of Seti I upon the arbor vitae, which is the exact symbolism of, again, the arbor vitae, where we get the cerebellum of the brain from the arbor vitae of the ancient Egyptian depictions of the cerebellum of the brain, which is literally where the resurrection occurs. It is the very essence of the resurrection itself, not just for the production of dimethyltryptamine in the brain, but literally this is the cerebellum. What I personally, it's not medically or actually called this, but I personally ascribe this to being literally called the cross of the cerebellum is what I call it, because there is a component, a core structure of white matter located within the arbor vitae in the cerebellum when viewed from every angle of the scans of the brain. And the arbor vitae is located deep at the deep core of the cerebellum, and it is consisted of white matter, so-called for its branch or tree-like or fern-like appearance. And it brings sensory and motor information to and from the cerebellum and regulates hand-eye coordination and basic motor functions. And so this is literally, it produces a cross on the cerebellum. And so this is exactly the tree of life where the resurrection takes place, where the resurrected, the slain God is crucified, and where the slain God is resurrected. And this is why the slain God is always depicted as being crucified on the tree. We find this in Conan the Barbarian, crucified upon the tree of woe. Again, echoing this mythology of Woden crucified upon the tree, upon the Yggdrasil tree. And again, the various depictions of Odin are also depicted as the hanged man, again depicting the death of the season, the underworld of Saturn, the hanged Lord hanged upside down upon the cross, what is known as St. Andrew's cross, the cross of the upside down crucifixion. Which again is the essence of the hanged man. So again, the path of the fool of Jesus throughout the year, from the spring to the winter, and on and on and on throughout the path of the sun. So from resurrection from death to resurrection and eternal life. And so this is exactly also depicted why I've discovered a huge monumental discovery that I don't know how I found this, but I literally just looking at I was looking for one of the posters for Ridley Scott's film Prometheus, which was again about the alien films and about the progenitor race who created the human race. Essentially what we would call the Anunnaki, if you ascribe to Sitchin's false versions of the Anunnaki as the progenitor race, which it literally has nothing to do with that. If you study the actual anthropology, if you study the actual linguistics and the actual ancient history, Zecharia Sitchin was literally the alone in his interpretations of that. And the reason why he was alone was because he was a Freemasonic shill, a complete mouthpiece designed to promote this false alien agenda to the mass population, whereas every scholar completely disavows what Sitchin had concluded based on literally zero evidence for his interpretations of the linguistics, whereas every other interpretation was very similar and a lot more credible. But we're going way far off topic here. But so again, this is why I've discovered that Ridley Scott also depicted the crucifixion of the alien resurrection of the cross upon the cerebellum, upon literally the fourth. And all right, so we're going to get into it. We can't even get into that. And so I don't know if it was originally Brad Clausen or my friend Aaron Vogt who. I know Aaron didn't make this image. I think it may have been Brad, one of my contemporaries and colleagues, Brad Clausen. I forget who. I'm not sure who actually originally did this, but either way, that's to give the credit. But that's aside from the point of that I'm trying to make is that there's. I will connect tons of other things here, but so let's show. And let's break down this description here of whoever originally made this connection or this image, should I say. So The connections, the obvious symbolic connections here are we have the symbolisms of the Atif crown and the ostrich feathers, which, as we covered in Symbols of Power Part 3, to Gary Osborne's connections that he made in Gateway of God of the Atif crown of Osiris with the human midbrain complex, as I showed some more detailed descriptions of in Symbols of Power Part 3, but I needed to also go back and add that citation as well. But so as we symbolized there, and as was also symbolized by Gary Osborne in Magical Egypt Part 2 by Chance Gardner, also about the Atif crown literally corresponding to the hippocampus of either side of the brain. And I mean, this all goes so deep. Like, this is literally too much to cover all in this video. We'll get way too far off track of the original point and message of this film. So I'm just going to have to skip over all that. We'll just have to leave all that out. But I can't show this without getting into the full thing. So again, the third ventricle is the exact same homologous correspondence on the actual body of Osiris here in the artwork, depicted as the Ordeos serpent here upon the brow, or upon the third eye, the crown, the forehead, which is where always located the sun disk is always located between the two eyes. So again, in the various depictions, Osiris is also always depicted with the cross and the crossed arms, which is the position of death, the position of the mummy, this death's head, the skull and bones of the crossbones, which is the posterior view of the brainstem, which is from behind. You see the arms, or the cross corresponds to the cerebellar peduncles, as well as the pineal gland corresponds exactly to where the Oreos would be located. And so also the third ventricle, once again, is directly attributed to the Oreos upon the forehead, or upon the crown. Just as the thalamus is the crown, the thalamus is the actual diencephalon, is the two heads, the two sides of the ostrich feathers of the crown. So it's the obvious connections here, just an obvious symbolism of the god of resurrection and the god of the crossroads, which is literally the cruce of the brain, literally the crucible, where the crucible takes place and you are crucified on the arbor vitae of the cerebellum, which again, the pineal gland, produces the dimethyltryptamine of the tamarisk tree of the brainstem, where the Christ is crucified. And just as we have the same symbolism of Christ crucified upon the brainstem once again, as the cross is literally the cerebellar cross, where the neurons and the intersections occur in the brainstem, which is literally the crux. It is the cross. It is literally the cruce of the brain. But so this is how the sacrificed and slain and resurrected God is depicting the process of the human anatomy, of the occult esoteric anatomy of the human body, which is, again, as we covered, as above, so below the belt. It is the Christ being crucified at the cerebellum of the brain, which is depicted as being crucified on the tree of knowledge, which is the central nervous system, the cerebral tree, the central nervous tree. And of course, the tamarisk, it goes even deeper. The tamarisk tree was associated with the psychedelic brew, or the psychedelic qualities of the dimethyltryptamine, the DMT, which is also produced in altered states of consciousness, as we're talking about the divination practices of the psychedelic rituals of the vulva.
Drink the vision mead of knowledge, to learn what it is to live and die in honor, to be in battle slain, and in death rewarded by the Valkyrie's embrace. The warrior maidens will carry you to the shimmering depths of Valhalla.
And this is exactly why the crucifix, the Jesus Christ, is literally the exact same symbol as the Greek sai, as the runic algiz, the witch's staff, again, the witch's broom. It's the staff of divination, of the divine foresight. The algiz, Proto-Germanic algiz, became Old English elks, or in other words, elks. And so the elder Futhark was the upward, and the younger Futhark became inverted as the downward. And it was later transcribed or given the sound value of Latin X. So that's where it went from Z to X. So it went from the Z rune to the X rune, and that's where it was again changed from Algiz, which was the Z, into the Elks, or the X, and Old Italic alphabets, which was again in turn derived from the Greek Psi, which was given the value of K, of X. Again, that sound, the Ek, the K, the X sound. And so the Anglo-Saxon rune for Algiz is variously recorded as Aelx, or Elks, Ilks, Ilks, Eox, or Ilix, or Elux. And all of these are very significant, very telling for the Latin sound of and the Latin value of X, or KS, X, X. So the symbolism was used during World War II eras as for being upward for born and downward for died, which the downward is obviously comes from the hanged man position of Odin on the tree, sacrificed on the Yggdrasil, on the world tree, on the tree of life, which was literally the winter season, the season of death, of the king of the winter season, Saturn, Odin, the king of death, and the hanging on the tree, which is the origin of the tarot hanged man card. And so this is why the downward runic symbolism, it's the symbolism for the peace sign, which is again the symbol of rest and peace, again death and peace, the absolute bottom of the year, the winter season of the year, the death of the year. And so the X is essentially the hex. And so the X in Spanish is equis, Greek, which means snake. So we're talking about the X, which is the crossroads, the crossing and the intersection points of the two snakes. And of course, in Egyptian was known as the Heka, which the Heka was literally the god of magic, literally the god of magic and medicine, the personification of magic itself. And as Joshua J. Mark for Ancient History Encyclopedia.eu brilliantly has a brilliant breakdown and a brilliant article on all of this. And so Heka was literally the personification of, again, magic and healing, and he was literally the origin of the Equis, of the dual snakes intertwining upon the pole. He carried a staff entwined with two serpents, the symbol originally associated with healing from the god Ninazu of Sumer, and was adopted for Heka and traveled to Greece, where it became associated with their healing god, son of Apollo, which was Asclepius, known as the serpent and the pole, and today known as the caduceus, the symbol of the medical profession and healing. The gods of healing and magic. And Heka was also attributed to a trinity of creation, essentially with Heka, Sia, and Hu were representative of the powers of creation, sustenance, and death of the universe. So, which was akin to the Hindu tripartite aspects of creation or God as generation, operation, and dissolution of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, as we covered in Symbols of Power Part 3, much more in depth and thoroughly. And so Heka was linked to the creative aspects of both the heart and the tongue. The heart was considered the seat of one's individual personality, thought, and feeling, while the tongue gave expression to these aspects and brought them into existence. So again, this is referring to the tripartite aspects of the mental, the vocal, and the genital creation. So there are actually 4 levels: mental, vocal, heart level, and genital or sacral creation. So, but tripartite as the trinity of creation, as we covered earlier on and in the previous films. And so again, the symbolism of the Heka is literally the symbols of the crook and flail, the cross of Osiris, or the cross of the Pharaoh, the cross of the serpent king, who crosses, again, the X, which was symbolized as the crossroads of death. And this is not in any way actually legitimately connected to any type of scholarly interpretation, but the flail itself, the Heka is the crook, but the flail is actually more attributed to Heka itself, because again, it's literally like a broken form of the Algiz rune, and it was used for threshing the grain, the agriculture, and associated again with the shepherd and the agriculture, just as Osiris was the shepherd and the agriculture, just as Jesus was also the shepherd and the agriculture. And again, representing the cross and the crossroads of the the crucifixion, the crucible. The etymology of English actually comes from Anglish, essentially from Anglish, or what was known as Angelish, particularly ultimately from the Proto-Indo-European root of hang, which we can liken to hang, which is the root of hang, and it means narrow, constricted, or compact, narrow, constricted, tight. And so again, English comes from Anglish, which comes from essentially the land from the Angles, the land of the Angles. The land they inhabited was probably because it was shaped like a fish hook, which is where we get angle from, which is linked to angle, which is where we get fishing as angling, because the angle of the fish hook is where we get the word angling from, is from the angle of the fish hook, because an angle is to fish with a hook, which is from the suffix Proto-Indo-European root of onculo, which is what gives us the root of ankle, which, because angle is linked to ankle, because ankle comes from the angle of the ankle itself, which is from the Proto-Indo-European root of ang, or ankh, because an ankh is to bend, which is where we get the Egyptian prominent symbol, which composes itself of four angles, prominent sharp angles, with the most prominent bend, with the bend hook, or in other words, the symbolically known as the ru, or which is the bend. It's the hook. It's the ankle, made. So it gets its name from the ankle, from the angles that compose it. And again, ankh, to bend, aglu, corner, Lithuanian anka literally means loop. So again, the ankh is it's the looped, it's the angled loop, linked with angum, limb, or ankle, again, hook. And so this gets us into the ultimate root etymon of all of these words, which is the ang, which by declension and by sound shift and vowel shift all throughout the different cultures and languages of the world, all throughout history, it shifts from ang to ang to eng to ing to ong to ung, and these are all the same phonetic, essentially the same phonetic enunciations: the ang, the eng, the ing, the ung, the ang, the ankh. All the same, just very similar vowel shifts, and how the word shifts and translates over time and transforms over time. And so the root of ang, again, ultimately comes from Proto-Indo-European ha'ang, meaning narrow, which is Proto-Indo-European ha'ang, meaning to constrict, which gives us German eng, which is narrow. And we have this essentially becomes the word hang. And again, a hang is you hang from a hook, or you hang from a noose. A noose is an ankh, a noose is an angle, it is a bend, it is a loop. It is a noose from which you hang, and when you hang, this creates great pain or great anguish. And anguish is from the same root of ang. And again, anguish is extreme pain, either of the body or the mind, excruciating distress, which is linked to Germanic cognate of anger, and from Latin anguista, narrowness, difficulty, distress. And again, this is the narrowness of the breath, or the narrowness, the shallowness of breathing, the shallowness, the constricting. And we cover this thoroughly in the Symbols of Power Part 3 film, about when we covered the etymology of sphinx and sphinx, and to asphyxiate, and the actual physical dynamics, the physics of constriction and contraction and strangling, and the physical dynamics of the torus field of constricting, and of implosion, of constricting, and so then we have the similar root of ang, which is with the e, angi, anga, which is from Old French anga, from late Latin angelus, which is the root of angel, or Greek angelos, which literally means angel. So it's the literal etymological connection of angle to angel. Of French, anga is angel. And again, from Greek angelos, which is messenger. It literally means angel. Messenger is an angel of the gods, an angel of the heavens. And this is how, in astrotheology, the true origins and the true meaning of an angel, again, literally means messenger. Essentially a messenger from heaven, a messenger of God, if you will. But so this is how literally in astrotheological terms it comes from the zodiacal wheel, which is composed and comprised of specific angles of the zodiac, different degrees and the angles of the measures of the planets, which are the messengers of God, the messengers of the heavens, which are the planets themselves, the Elohim, the angels, the seven archangels, which are the actual planets in the solar system. So the measure of the angles, the specific angles of light, reflecting from these planets and from the stars and from the heavens, the measuring of these angles is divining the message of God, or the message of the future. You are divining an inspirational message from the heavens. So you are literally translating the language of the angels, the language of the angles of light. Hello everyone, my name is Cullen Smith. I'm a published author. Today I would like to introduce you all to my brand new published book, The Hive Mind Invasion of Civilization, a compendium of esoteric science, symbolism, and universal secrets. If you'd like to purchase this book, you can head over to my brand new website that I've set up. It's still very bare bones. There's a lot of work I need to do on the site, but for now it's got the basic things that I need on there until I upload all of my content. You can sign up for the newsletter to receive email updates on all of my posts as I begin to populate the site with all of my archives of articles, books, videos, and films and courses and all of that good stuff. So you'll get notifications as I begin to populate the website with all of my content on it. So these are great gifts that you can pick up and also support Lifting the Veil and the work that I do in the process. So feel free and head on over to my brand new website, liftingtheveil.tv, and I will see all of you there. All right, have a great day. Thank you. My name is Cullen Smith. This is Lifting the Veil. You can find all of my full books, presentations, videos, films, articles, posts at subscribestar.com/liftingtheveil. Patreon has suspended this work and my account and income stream for this content. So if you are a supporting patron, then please, I ask you to move your support over to subscribestar.com/liftingtheveil. And I have just established a completely free, uncensored, totally free speech social media platform that replaces Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, every other platform all in one on liftingtheveil.locals.com. You can download the Locals app and you can join our group and have totally free speech and totally uncensored, unrestricted content access. And there is also a ton of exclusive content, and I will leave the cited reference links in the description down below. So you can check that out for all of my full content, and I will see you guys in the next video. I rely solely on word of mouth, and the recommended algorithms are not recommending any of my videos or films anymore. My channel has literally been completely restricted, so I rely on your help by sharing my work around if you appreciate it, and leave me your comments. I definitely want to know what you have to share and what you have to think about all of this stuff, and I will see you in the next video.